Yeah, it's kind of nice.
Hello and welcome to the Crowd Chronicles. I am Joey D'Antoni, and today we're talking about Azure VWAN, or Virtual WAN as it's officially called. I'm here with my colleagues John Morehouse and our special guest today, Denny Cherry. And we're going to take kind of a deep dive into the world of Azure VWAN. This is a pretty, of all some of the features we've been talking about are easy to build out and demo in your environment. This one, unless you happen to work for like one of my old employers like Comcast, probably not something you're going to want to do. Denny, can you tell us who you are and introduce yourself?
Hi, I am Denny Cherry, Principal Consultant and CEO for Denny Cherry and Associates Consulting. I've been working in Azure forever. Apparently, Azure's 15 as of last week or
I saw
something, or a
that.
couple weeks ago. So I've been working with it for that long. I've been working with SQL Server for well over 2 decades at this point. God help me, it's coming from 3 decades. So I've been doing all this stuff for quite a while at this point.
And John, you're a regular here, but why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is John Morehouse. I'm also a principal consultant at Denny Cherry and Associates Consulting. I am not the CEO. So I have been working with SQL for a really long time too. Azure more recently, probably in the last 10 years, give or take. Uh, and VWANs, our Azure VWANs is a mysterious entity for me. So I'm looking forward to this session.
So let me start out by saying, if you have a few VNets in a couple of regions, this probably isn't the feature for you. If you're looking at deployments that have like 20 VNets or across 3 or 4 regions, and you have all these on-prem locations like we show on the screen now, that's probably where you're going to want to use this. If you have an express route, you probably want to use this. Denny, can you go into a little bit more detail into the use cases there?
Yeah, the big use case for VLAN is companies that have huge network infrastructure. So 20, 30 plus VLANs, all in their environment. That's where VLANs are really going to make the most sense for you. Um, Once you get into the smaller deployments, they A, don't make a whole lot of sense because of their complexity, and B, the cost. VLANs are not cheap. Um, so deploying them when you don't need them is going to end up costing you a bunch of money. Basically, especially when you're dealing with things like Azure Firewall and how to route all your data across networks or across regions, rather. That's going to get all sorts of slow when you cross the regions, and Azure VWAN can help you with that and help make things a little less expensive from if you're dealing with things at that scale.
Yeah, John, you and I talked about hub and spoke in our last
Yep.
episode, and I think this. Actually, wait, I have a demo. I meant to do
This
this.
seems, look at that
I,
diagram. This seems like a very
I
hub and
brought a
spoke.
wheel.
Oh, look, you have a hub and spoke.
I have a hub and spoke. I brought a wheel. Uh, no, but I think VWAN. I know you're saying you're struggling to kind of understand it, but I think the way to think about it is like that. It is just hub and spoke, but it's hub and spoke implemented kind of globally. Does that make help you?
So it sounds like an elevated hub and spoke,
Yeah.
right? So you
Yeah.
can have a hub and spoke within your VNets, but then you can put a VWAN on top of that.
Yeah, so in a VWAN, you have a hub that's like a regional hub. Uh,
Sure.
that's and then that can just hit directly to the backplane. And I think that virtual hub has more bandwidth than your standard virtual network would have. So it's faster and probably lower latency paths. The other thing Denny mentioned pricing. So the pricing is just having a VWAN hub costs 25 cents an hour. Uh, Plus, there's scaling units for VPNs, as well as based on the number of connections. And then wait, there's more. You pay the similar to VNet peering, where you pay for that outbound data transfer. You pay for that outbound data transfer as well. And likewise, if you have ExpressRoute, you would pay for that. So you pay a lot, but it's one of those services where like it can actually reduce your cost compared to building like hub and spoke in every region and having like a whole bunch of say Azure firewalls or app gateways and things like that.
Yeah.
So like most of my clients don't have a VWAN implemented that I'm aware of. Like how prevalent are you seeing this in the wild?
The client I work with that does real estate data, they actually have it. And
Okay.
it's gone across like 2 or 3 regions. It just, they were able to, and they don't have a big implementation, but they were able to consolidate some of that. Some of those because like firewalls are expensive. And I think it also helps tighten your security, right, Danny?
Yeah, yeah, it can definitely help tighten it up and help make it so that you only have to deal with one set of everything as opposed to having every firewall out there having its own set of rules and having to deal with all that stuff independently.
Is the firewall service the same in VWAN? It's just implemented at the hub?
I believe it is the same. Yeah, it's just implemented at the hub level as opposed to the individual VLAN level.
Yeah, and that's the kind of the key center of the hub. So there's a virtual VWAN hub, and that's the thing you pay for the deployment hours of, and that's the heart of the virtual WAN, and it really acts as the control plane for the whole thing. And that's what enables that hub and spoke architecture, not just regionally but globally. And that hub is like where your VPNs live, John. So it's much like
Okay.
yeah, but like I think the other difference is you can more easily go cross region from that hub than you can in say just using a site to site or point to site VPN. But
So,
yeah, go ahead.
just so other than cost, obviously this is a little bit more complex. Like, where would you draw the line of the number of VNets to implement a VWAN? Are we, I know we talked about like 20 VNets or higher, I think is what Denny mentioned. At what point, like, where would you two start with thinking about doing a VWAN on top of things?
I would so my starting point, and I want to let Denny answer this too. My starting point, I think, would be around how many on-premises locations you needed to connect to. Like if you had to connect to like more than 2 on-premises locations, just having a centralized VPN instead of having one to one, I think that could make it more cost effective. If you have ExpressRoute, there are some kind of cost benefits as well in terms of like how the ExpressRoute connections take place and circuits are built. And then I think those are my main two. The firewall is like kind of a tertiary thing. Denny, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree there. Like, if you've got a bunch of on-prem offices, then it makes a lot of sense to look at VWAN with a much smaller VNet count. If you're in a cloud-only environment, so say you've got a production environment that's only cloud, and then you've got a separate environment that actually connects to your offices, then I would probably want to see a decent number of VNets before I start looking at VLAN, just because a lot of those cost savings that you're going to see with your on-prem VPN environments are going to go away when you're only dealing with the cloud.
Yeah, I was wondering about an all cloud deployment.
Yeah.
I think all cloud would be like if you're like really global and in a bunch of regions.
Yeah. Yeah, that's going to make an awful lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah, then you're going to want to centralize some stuff. And I think like one of the other services, it's a really expensive service that I think the cost gets kind of reduced if you're using virtual WAN is DDoS protection. Because isn't that like per VNet? And when you're using virtual WAN, you can centralize that.
Yeah. DDoS protection is just a global thing you flip on.
Yeah.
And then you tell it, hey, these are all my VNets. Protect them all.
But they bill you by the VNet.
No, 'cause it's only one thing.
Okay, it's only one thing.
Yeah.
So let's pop into the portal.
It's kind of handy though.
Yeah. It's like, but it's like a baseline cost of like $1,200 a month, I think. Okay, so
Swipe right.
Yeah. Okay, so I built a new resource group for this. I don't know how much money this is going to end up costing me, but I already pre-built the virtual WAN, and it's kind of funny. Denny and John and I were looking at this earlier, and I notice here that the screen where you actually build the VWAN doesn't give you any options, which usually means you click like 3 things to build it. That usually means it's going to be an expensive service.
Yeah.
You might want to zoom in, Joey.
Oh, thank you. There are no hubs, so how do we get started here? Getting started page.
Yeah. So
New hub.
Build a hub. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's hope this is not the gateway problem we had. 2 videos ago, 3 videos ago? And we would probably, oh my.
Yeah. Okay. And this is where we decide the infrastructure routing units, and this is how you're charged based on the number of these. So as you
Yeah.
can see, the scale's pretty high.
The more you scroll down, the more money that costs you. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think there have ever been 2,000 solutions here, and here I can see my preferences. What's ASPath, Denny? Do you know what that means?
I don't know. I think that allows you to have kind of the preference of anything.
Oh yeah, okay. And then we can create our gateway, and it did warn me this is going to take 30 minutes, so we're probably not actually going to build this. We're going to build it and then go away.
Just as long as it does with the non VWAN.
Wow, I didn't realize you'd get a 10 gig VNet or VPN. That's got to cost a lot of money.
Yep.
Okay, so
so I assume that because Joe and I have talked about this before in a previous video, like planning out your Azure networking is probably a critical step. So like I would think that planning this out should also be included. Like you don't just willy-nilly throw this out there.
You mean nobody's doing this ad hoc in this video like we are?
Well, yeah. I've got an Excel file to keep track of all our stuff, but
Well, it is funny because all network administrators, at least in a pre-cloud world, use Microsoft Excel to track their IP addresses.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't? I do.
No, seriously, like the IPs at Comcast
No, I know.
in an Excel spreadsheet.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no. We've all dealt with Excel spreadsheets for IPs and firewall rules.
Yep. Totally normal.
Yep, totally normal. Totally agree. I'm just saying that throwing this VWAN out there is probably not the right idea. That you need to plan it and like
Absolutely, for sure. Nobody's going to just do this. What we're doing right now.
Yeah.
we're just do this in production.
We're just doing it so you, the viewers, can get some ideas of what this looks like. And here we're going to create a point-to-site network. Let's see if this screen breaks.
Great.
Create new, yeah.
Yep. It is times like this that I'm reminded about the flexibility of the cloud. The three of us, we all know we love Azure, but I still get astounded sometimes that we can just easily create these virtual things out there. VNets, VMs, databases, all sorts of things with a couple clicks in a portal and a browser, and we've got a resource.
Yeah.
Scaling a VM is literally a reboot, and you wait.
It's that stupid screen again.
Yeah, that requires throwing some GUIDs in there.
Yeah, and with very specific slashes.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Slashes are going to get us.
We're not actually going to build a point in site because we did this in the last one or 2 episodes ago, and you saw it. But here you can see you can configure this. You can specify DNS. You create a point to the site for all the same reasons you would create a point to site on a regular VPN where your users are connecting. Here we're going to have the option if we want to create an express route gateway. I don't have that kind of budget. Actually, I think this one as well. I'll go ahead and create this because it'll probably just let me do it.
Yeah, you gotta attach the express route object later.
Yeah. So
Hey,
now
validation passed.
we create a gateway, and
it died.
it wanted a.
I hate when validation doesn't actually validate stuff.
Yeah, that's the Azure networking team is not on our good list for.
No.
What the? That was not fun.
Yeah, well, go back to overview. What's the error message?
It said my IP range wasn't valid. Is 10.0.10-10-24 not valid?
No, you 10.0.0.0/24.
And I can't
Change it there.
You can't change it. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Whatever.
once again, I don't know why they didn't validate that in the team is apparently allergic to validating things in the browser.
It's overrated.
Well, I guess I don't have to worry about my VWAN costing us too much money, but that gives you an idea of what the process is. Like John mentioned, this isn't something you're going to willy-nilly do in the portal. Like,
Careful planning is needed.
Careful planning is needed.
Yeah, sure.
One of the things I think that's kind of interesting about VWAN compared to some of the other services that are out there is it kind of does automatic scaling for you. Uh, and that's always useful, except for the money aspect of that. Uh, it can cost as much as you can spend, basically. I think that's a safe way to say it, Denny.
Yeah, that's definitely a safe way to say it. It will cost what it costs, and it will cost all of your money.
Yeah, so like you can dynamically scale things. You can have it auto scale connections, um, and you can also do software defined WAN. It integrates with other software defined WAN providers, like some of the third party solutions that are out there, like FortiGate and some of the various other. I'm sure Cisco has a solution that integrates with this. But basically, it's just really hub and spoke on steroids. One of the other things I wanted to mention that I didn't was that internet routing versus Microsoft backbone routing. Denny, can you talk to that a little bit and like explain that for people who might not know what that means?
Yeah, that's one of the really esoteric parts of Azure. Basically, it's just defining who's controlling the routing, be it Microsoft or a third party. So with Microsoft routing, you're basically Microsoft making all the decisions and passing the data out from Azure out to the rest of the world. Whereas with the other options, then you're defining it. Whereas the third party is going to be the one that actually is pushing all that data out or not. Um, it's one of those things that I think only a couple of customers have actually used. I don't think I've ever actually seen anybody select anything other than Microsoft.
Yeah, the Microsoft routing is usually preferable because it tends to be lower latency and
That's what I always select.
they've laid all the fiber. Like
Hmm.
they have really done all the hard work. Um, yeah, just back to pricing a little bit. The virtual hub is measured in terms of connection units, and this is like one of those random made up things. Although it does have ties to bandwidth, it's effectively
Articles.
bandwidth. The scale unit for site to site VPNs has one unit's a total capacity of 500 megabits per second. They deploy two of them. ExpressRoute scale units are 2 gig, and so like 5 scale units would be 10 gig, uh, and those get they're more expensive on the lower end, and then as you spend more, it gets slightly cheaper per unit. So uh, it is, I would say, calculating how much you think you're going to spend on VWAN is almost as difficult as pricing, as like building out your network architecture.
We should really like think about doing a cost management video because every video we do, we talk about costs.
Yeah,
We should
I,
really do a video on like budgets and
I
cost
do have that. I
analysis.
do have that 2 days of training we could do on
Okay. Well, we got to do that now so we can refer back to it.
it. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's kind of that's a really interesting point. I think one of the cool things, and not to go too far into cost management in Azure is just monitoring. Like
Sure. Yep.
it's built exactly the same way as the monitoring solution is. So if you know how to do monitoring when you go into cost management, like budgets are just basically alerts that are hitting instead of getting a signal of CPU utilization, they're getting a signal of how much you're spending.
Yeah,
Yeah, but my experience, customers don't even know about budgets,
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
yeah,
But we should
yeah,
do that. We should think about that.
yeah. For the most part, yeah, customers don't know anything about budgeting in Azure. They spend money.
Spend,
Oh,
spend, spend.
hopefully it's okay.
Yeah.
Make it rain.
Yeah. Why is our bill a phone number?
Right.
That doesn't start with one.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's this is one of those and this is one of those services that you're big enough. If you've decided to implement VWAN, you're gonna have an expensive bill, and
And
you're gonna want to figure out. And I think kind of the interesting tie back into the cost management to VWAN. This is one of those things that's like a global cost. So it's not the simplest thing to like assign back to uh, business units, right? So like to think back to the cost management client of mine was a large coffee company that you've all been to, and pretty much everybody has been to. And these kind of components were in their like central subscription. So like all the network components. So it was almost like a classic IT architecture, right? Even though it was all cloud, they'd have like the central VWAN and the ExpressRoute stuff would all be like shared resources to all the subscriptions. And then like you develop features on a subscription MS. So like they
So,
use the ExpressRoute and VWAN, but it was
so,
like an IT cost.
okay, but so to that point, let me ask a question then. Could you have multiple VWANs? Like if you're global, let's think big scale. If you're global, I'm thinking about tagging,
Hmm.
right? So if you had a VWAN for like North America and a VWAN for South America and one for Europe, could
Hmm.
you then tag it so you at least have some notion of who's consuming that resource?
It is a taggable. You can tag the
Tag it, right?
individual
Could
resources.
you have
Yeah.
multiple VWANs and they all talk to each other?
You would
Yeah,
have multiple VWAN hubs. Like you
Okay.
kind of would have like one VWAN, I think, right?
yeah. You conceptually you'd have a VWAN which is everywhere.
So one VWAN with multiple hubs in each
And then you have
region,
a hub in each region that can then talk to each other.
and then you could tag those
Oh,
hubs accordingly.
then all your land would connect to the hub in their region.
So you could get some level of cost analysis in terms of, if you use tagging properly, we all love tagging
What I
Yeah,
what I don't know
stuff.
what I don't know, because so much of it's usage based, is if you could tie it back to
A
like
specific.
a specific set of resources. Yeah.
yeah. I don't know because like thinking back to like the bills I've seen, it's just network traffic.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not tied to a higher level thing like a tag or even a source where it's like coming from a VLAN or something like that. So it's just this is how much bandwidth was consumed
Yeah. It's
on this specific resource.
it's almost like a like a stream insight, or not. I can't remember the name of that service. Stream analytics query that runs at the hub, right, where it's just tracking how much bandwidth is going through.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I was just thinking of a way to, we all, again, tag your stuff. You can at
Yeah.
least identify some level of fiscal responsibility for that item.
Yeah.
You know,
Generally speaking, it's something that just gets broken down by
sure.
yeah. Like everybody eats some of the cost. Uh, but yeah, I think we're like I think we're about good on this, and we can kind of
Sure.
start to wrap up. I think the thing to remember about virtual WAN is if you're big, you're multi-region, particularly if you have a whole lot of on-premises sites, that's when you want to look into this service. And like we mentioned, it's not something you want to just jump into and do what we did and like click next, and build some stuff. Uh, you want to plan this and plan your networking. And like we've been saying throughout this networking series, uh, planning up front is pretty important. Uh, Denny, you want to add
Absolutely.
anything?
No, I would say yeah, planning is important. I mean, the upside of all this networking stuff being in the cloud is you can change all of it. The downside is some of it gets very, very hard to change, and it requires decent amounts of outages to actually change some of this stuff.
Yeah.
But it is all fixable to some extent. It just requires enough time and energy to actually fix it.
Yeah, it's like shockingly not easy to re-IP stuff in the cloud.
Yeah, it gets really weird. Yeah.
John, what are you gonna say?
No, trying to re-IP things is painful.
Yeah, it's like that's the one part that's just as painful as on-prem. Like moving networks around and changing firewall rules, that's actually pretty easy. But like actually re-IPing stuff or redoing NSGs, it's all super messy. And like VPNs all take time, and you got to consider like one of the things to also consider about this is like with things like ExpressRoute, just the lead time you're going to have because it's if I wanted to buy ExpressRoute for my office tomorrow, I it would take me probably 2 months to get it.
Oh,
And it
at
depends.
least.
Like if you're in a colo, you might be able to just buy a lease, but like a lot of these things are going to have lead times associated with them, and it's not something you can just quickly jump in and do.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
Awesome stuff.
All right, well, that was VWAN, and we're going to continue the rest of this 10-part networking series. I feel like it could be 20 parts because there's
Yes.
so much to Azure networking. Uh, Denny, I don't think I told you this. I was going to do, when John and I did our like overview, I was going to grab all the resource providers from AZ Network because I was like, Can't be that many network things, right?
Oh, there are.
It's 179.
Yeah, sounds about right.
I had I knew there were a lot of network
Yep.
things, but I figured I could get it onto a slide. No.
Yeah.
No, there's a lot of components.
Yeah.
Nope,
Yeah.
nope.
Yeah. Cool. Well, like and subscribe and join us for our next episode.
Thanks, Denny, for joining us.
Thanks, Denny.
Yeah, no worries.
All right.